On today's show, one Apple device for 6 months. Is FaceID on MacBooks redundant? Supersized swap files, dirty data, the subscription revolution, iPhone upgrades and virtual windows, and eggnog. Yes. I'm Mike Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like the video, subscribe to the channel and ring my bell. And before we get into today's questions, because this is another iCave Answer special, what is the best Apple product that you have used in 2021? Now, I'm not talking what was the best release in 2021. I'm not talking about what is your favourite brand new product. I'm saying what is the most important product to you, or the one that's changed your life the most, or the one that's brought you the most joy. Let me know in the comments. I want to make a video where I sort of summarise kind of everyone's feelings on Apple in 2021. And here we go into your questions. Evan Rodgers asks, if you could only use a single Apple device for 6 months, what would you choose? You'd have an equivalent Windows or Android device for the others. Now, honestly, if I had to have just the one, a bit of a weird choice probably for most people, but I'd go for my iPad. And I know this is probably not what you would expect from me, being the guy with the big Mac in the background who films his videos on an iPhone. However, if I only have one Apple device that I can use, I want to pick something that can cover the most bases. So, if I have to have an Android phone, I can use that to just make and receive calls. If I can't have a desktop, I want to have a decent sized screen for editing on. And if I can't have an iPhone, then I also need something with a decent camera on it that I can film with. And the iPad fits a lot of these categories. I've got a decent camera, I can make videos with that, I can then edit the videos with that, I can publish them on that, I can make decent thumbnails on that. It kind of makes the most sense to me. And also the iPad is probably the thing I interact with the most during the day. So I will quite often, if I'm working in the kitchen here, have the iPad playing stuff in the background, all that kind of thing. So my iPad, that's the one. Team Kinetix asks, iCave Answers, how do you think Apple might implement FaceID on the MacBook? FaceID to unlock or log in is useful, but would Apple Pay still require a physical button press like it does on the iPhone? If so, would that negate the point of having FaceID, as you'd be pressing the Touch ID button anyway? Also, congrats on the new job. Here's hoping that the UK government doesn't restrict hospitality again. Now, I would point out, I think this is something that's been completely overblown by people when they've been talking about Apple Pay on the Mac being kind of requiring extra button presses. No, it doesn't. What you're doing here is with any kind of Apple Pay that you're doing online, where you're doing an Apple Pay on a website, you're clicking on the Pay button. So you're not reaching up to the Touch ID button. You're going to click on the Pay button. It's going to pop up with Apple Pay, scan your face, and away it goes. That's it. That's the way that it's supposed to be. I don't know who has brought in this idea that we must press a physical key on a keyboard in order to use Apple Pay to show intent. Now, that's what we've done with the mouse, with the trackpad. We've clicked on the Pay Now button. That's what it's supposed to do. So I don't think there needs to be an extra step. There isn't with the iPhone. If you're actually going to pay for something in a shop, you touch your phone on the payment point. It brings up Apple Wallet. You show it to your face, and then you touch it, and that's it. You don't have to double click the button if you're not doing just an online payment. So, yeah, I don't think that's a massive thing. I think it's been massively overblown by people that want a reason for it not being here yet. Don't know why. But there is still a weird kind of cohort of people that really prefer Touch ID over Face ID. If you're one of those people, I'm not judging, but please just let me know why in the comments section. And don't try and tell me it's because Touch ID is more secure, because it just isn't. Arthur Swart asks, iCave Answers, since switching to the M1, I haven't been able to play Cities Skylines because the 8GB MacBook Air runs out of RAM. I can't find a way to increase the page file size, which might solve the issue. Is there a way to do that, and will the larger page file size degrade the unified memory faster than usual? Okay, one little misunderstanding in there. I think you've said, would it degrade the unified memory faster than usual? I think what you mean is the SSD, which is a separate thing. SSD is the storage, which is what's used for a page file to swap onto your kind of main storage drive. The unified memory is what you would call RAM between the CPU and the GPU. So I just wanted to clarify that in case it confused other people. But no, from what I've been looking at, and I've done a bit of research online, you can't change the size of the page file because it's completely dynamic on the Mac. So I think the biggest things that you can do is probably make sure that you've got nothing else running in the background, make sure that you've got nothing else that's using up any of that memory, startup programs that might be running without you starting them specifically, so maybe things like Dropbox in the background, if you've got any sort of antivirus running, which generally I don't think most Mac users need to have a background antivirus because of the way that macOS works, but I'm not saying if you think that you need it that you should get rid of it, but you might need to turn it off for this game. Beyond that, if you are desperate to play this game, I would recommend potentially looking into trading in your MacBook Air to get a 16GB model if you can't get the performance you need out of it, because I'm guessing this is running through Rosetta, which is probably why it's a little bit hungrier than it would be if it was native to Apple Silicon. It might be a case of you need to brute force this and get a 16GB version. Reselling the one that you've got now will probably not drop you too much, but I would do it before March if that's what you're going to do, because when the M2 comes out, that's when the prices are likely to drop more on M1. Brian Data asks, IK Answers, Data Science Dave, how dirty is your data that you need to wear a lab coat? This is how all data scientists dress, right? Also, yes, I know these are my Steve Jobs glasses, not my normal data scientist glasses. Sorry. Before we move on from this part, I just want to mention there have been a couple of complaints in the comment section about me having sponsors on the show. If you don't like having sponsors on the videos that you watch, it's very simple. All you do, join the Patreon. You don't have to do very much there, but you will get access to ad-free versions of all the shows. Otherwise, if you want this channel to be sustainable, if you want me to be able to buy things that we can review, for example, when new Macs come out, I need to do things that will pay the bills. That's how it works. Sorry. Thomas Rabenstein asks, IK Answers, today I have a question about a topic that is increasingly annoying me. It's about subscription models that are becoming increasingly widespread in the App Store. Every app, no matter how small, whether it's a simple to-do app or an editor or even 1Password, requires a monthly or annual subscription. As a user, I'm willing to pay a reasonable price for an app if it's useful, in exchange for continuous improvements and updates. Final Cut, Logic Pro, Motion, etc. A subscription model now leads to rejection for me, and I focus more and more on native apps or a few apps that I need for work. I no longer buy apps with subscriptions. What's your opinion on this trend? So I will tell you. There's been a bit of a shift in the way that software works, and it didn't used to be that there was much subscription stuff. I completely agree with you. However, you did used to buy, for example, Photoshop CS2, and then when the next version came out, CS3 or Photoshop 3 or whatever it was called, you know what I'm trying to say, you would buy the next version. And you didn't get a discount for having the previous version, you didn't get an upgrade, you paid for this version, and then if you wanted the new version, you paid for it. And that was the same with things like macOS. You used to, your Mac with macOS on it, and if you wanted the upgrade, I think upgrading to Snow Leopard from Leopard was $129, and then I think Lion was a $29 upgrade, and then it became free after that. I think part of the problem for software developers is that if they don't have some kind of ongoing income, then it's not practical to keep developing the software. We could go back to the way where you pay for each major upgrade, or you pay to unlock the new features that that upgrade would have brought. But I think the fact that we're now having the App Store system where you buy an app and that kind of gives you a perpetual license to it isn't necessarily going to be sustainable for developers. Like, you wouldn't have expected to buy the Worms game for the PC in 1993 and still be getting updates to it. Like, that wouldn't make sense, because the developers made their money in 93 and now they're not getting paid anymore. Now, it does mean that things that are first party, like for the Mac, Final Cut and Logic and things that you've mentioned there, they make sense actually to have a single payment and then you get free updates to it, because if you're getting these free updates that will still work with your Mac, if you're using a 2012 Mac that no longer uses the latest operating system, it's not going to be able to run the latest Final Cut either. So Apple is making its money there on the hardware. You've bought the software and now you're buying the hardware to support the software that you already own. And I understand your frustration, I really do, especially when it is with a very simple app like a to-do list. But that's why Apple gives you one. Apple gives you notes that you can make to-do lists in. It gives you a whole bunch of other stuff. But this is the thing, there are a lot of free options out there, and I think the only software that I actually subscribe to at the moment is Photoshop. I do Adobe's, I think it's photographer package they call it, and it's something like £8-9 a month. And I get Photoshop and Lightroom. And I don't use Lightroom, but I use Photoshop all the time, every single day, for making the thumbnails for the show. And for that, £9 a month for a piece of software that I use every single day makes sense to me. Would I be frustrated if I was paying for something like Evernote? 100%. And I tried using Evernote on the free version, and it turned out that it sucked anyway. And decided to lose all of my notes. So no way I was going to pay for it. And also, Apple has notes. And it's fine. Like, it doesn't need to be replaced. A lot of the first-party stuff that Apple does is really good. And I've got to be honest with you, I agree, having a huge list of subscription software doesn't make any sense. But subscribing to the stuff that you want to be kept up to date does kind of make sense. I know it's probably not what you wanted to hear. I'm sure you wanted to hear me rant on why it's awful, but I kind of see why they do it. I'm sorry, but if you want to be able to buy a piece of software and have it work for you for 10 years, you kind of need to pay the developers to keep developing it a bit. Sorry. James Apple asks, would you upgrade to the iPhone 14 Pro Max from the iPhone 12 Pro Max? In one way, this is a super easy question to answer. In another way, it's impossible to answer. In the first way, I have a 2-year upgrade cycle on my phone because in the UK, we still have contracts. We don't pay upfront for the phone handset. We pay for it over 2 years in most cases. Obviously, you can buy it from Apple and have just a SIM deal, but that's not what I do. I pay a monthly subscription to my phone, and that will be ready to upgrade when the 14 Pro Max comes out. Unless it won't be, because the 12 Pro Max was delayed. This could be a problem. We need to work out what's going to happen here. But on the other hand, we've heard rumours about what the 14 Pro Max is going to look like. It's probably going to have a punch-out camera, which might be an oval or might be just a circle, and it's going to be a bit flatter and a bit thicker and not have a camera bump, potentially. We'll see if this all comes true. I have no reason to doubt what John said, but it's also quite a long way out and could change before then. That's kind of where I sit on it. I will probably upgrade to a 14 something, but I'll be quite annoyed if I can't get it on release day because of the 12 Pro Max being delayed last time. NewQuest asks, iCave answers, if Microsoft and Qualcomm have an exclusive deal, how am I able to run Windows 11 for ARM in parallels on my M1 MacBook Pro Max? Because you're doing it illegally. That's why. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear. I'm here to give out the bad news today. But yeah, the reason that you're doing it is because you're doing it outside of the license of what you can do with Windows on ARM. Windows on ARM is only licensed for original equipment from Microsoft that they have sold, and Microsoft only sells Surface ARM systems that run on Qualcomm. So if you're running Windows for ARM on Parallels, that probably means that you grabbed it from the Insider program. That's what most people have done, or you found another repository that somebody else has grabbed it from the Insider program, and you're doing it through that way. Do I have a problem with it? No, absolutely not. But by the letter of the law, it's basically the equivalent of a Hackintosh, where macOS was only allowed to be run on Apple-branded hardware, and Windows, in this case, is only allowed to be run on Windows-branded hardware, which it isn't in that case. So that's kind of how you're doing it. The idea is that if this agreement expires and Apple is in a position to do a deal with Microsoft, that there may be a way of doing it in a first-party way. I don't think it'll be Boot Camp. I don't think it'll be a direct boot. I just don't think it's going to be something like Boot Camp, but I could be wrong. And finally, Evan Rodgers asks, iDrink answers, what's a good holiday eggnog recipe with and without alcohol? I'm going to level with you, Evan. I don't like eggnog. It's not a good thing. But if you must make it, you're going to need 50 grams of caster sugar, that's just under a couple of ounces, 4 egg yolks, a tablespoon of vanilla essence, and about 400 grams, which is, I don't know, about a pound of condensed milk. And if you want it boozy, 100ml of brandy. If you don't want it boozy, I would look for some brandy essence or something like that, which you can get from the baking aisle. You're going to put your sugar in a saucepan with 75ml of water. That's 2.5 ounces. Simmer that until the sugar is dissolved, and then let it just like cool down. Make yourself like a sugar syrup. Then you're going to beat the egg yolks with vanilla until it's smooth. Add the condensed milk and the brandy if you're making the boozy one, and the cooled sugar syrup. Mix it all together, and then pour it all into a jug and just let it chill overnight in the fridge, and you're good to go. That's basically how you make eggnog. I personally like it with a bit of nutmeg in it. You can also do it with a bit of cinnamon, works well, cloves, cardamom, and if you want to go fancy, if you want to put some nice spices into it, when you make that sugar syrup at the beginning, you want to throw in a bit of spice into that. Boil that, let it then chill down, and then strain out all the chunks of spices, and you're basically ready to go. Carry on with your recipe as you were. So that's it for your questions today. Don't forget, let me know what the best Apple product you used in 2021 was down in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because if you've got this far through the video, you must think it's okay. Thanks to the Patreons over there, and thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.